Hello all my subscribers and future subscribers. 18th of January today, and here is the part 2 of a wonderful impassioned speech by Nigel Farage. And he and Trump are really absolutely on the same page. Nation and sovereignty are their prime concerns. I've backtracked a little bit because it makes it more helpful, I think. So, Catania Alvin from London, Hampstead, 2.5 miles from the city of London. Okay.
That leaving the European Union would be a disaster. Well, can we please go back to first principles? Can we please start to change the debate? The referendum wasn't about whether someone thinks we might be worse off or someone thinks we might be better off. Economic projections are difficult at the best of times.
This is what has been completely misunderstood by so many people that I've spoken to. Good-meaning people, well-meaning people. They didn't understand the principle of sovereignty or enslavement, communism, dictatorship, and they just didn't get it.
The referendum was about something else. The referendum was about a word that now seems to have evaporated in our whole debate on Brexit. This word that actually is the ultimate prize. This word that our forebears fought and gave so much more for in 2 world wars and more. This word.
And 2 world wars, indeed. And having been, I keep going on about this, but having been born just before the 2nd World War, which makes me 79, so I've got a good stretch of time when I've done research, but also I've had the experience of what it's like being a child born into war. We were in places that were being bombed, so I know what it's like to have the sirens going, and I know what it's like to have doodlebugs. I'd get down on the floor and scream, apparently, so my sister told me.
That says we can be a free, independent, democratic, proud, self-governing state that makes its own laws, that controls its own borders, that chooses its friends around the world. And I want us to bring this word, this proud word, back into this whole debate. The word is, and what we voted for was, the independence of this country.
Exactly. Now, this country has been hijacked by the bankers. That's why we went to war, because the bankers took us to war. The bankers actually fund both sides. Now, this is something I only learned much later, and that's, and that's what we really need to understand about the whole situation way before the First World War, but at least from the Second World War, to understand what's been going on. More and more people are.
That is what we voted for. Independence.
And that's what we fought for. People thought, but it wasn't actually. It was to establish a one world satanic order. Yeah, and I add satanic in on purpose, because if you understand the level of paedophilia, if you understand within the Catholic Church and other churches and other areas as well, but particularly within the churches, the sacrifice, the child murder and sacrifice that is going on to this day is so shocking. And if we don't learn about it, we won't stop it.
And yet, despite the fact that we have this piece of law that says we will leave on WTO terms, and sure, no deal, no problem.
And we do have a law that says that the Queen signed it.
The difficulty is our political class do not believe in Britain.
Exactly. They're globalists. They believe in a one world order, a one world satanic order.
I want to ask you, do you believe in Britain?
Well, that's a good, healthy response, isn't it?
Pleased to hear it, because we have finished up, I'm afraid, with a failed negotiation, with a withdrawal agreement that in the end looked more like a surrender document of of a country that had been beaten at war and quite rightly was voted down by the House of Commons the other evening. But now, in a desperate attempt, the Prime Minister wants to try and get her Brexit in name only through, and she's now engaged on a cross-party debate.
Right, let me just explain that which I have done in one of my videos before, is that Theresa May is actually part of the Committee 300. Every Prime Minister has to be. And they run the show. They are the ones that are behind globalism and are really pushing it. And it was Cecil Rhodes in 1891, when they set up the Committee 300, who said that they wanted to bring as many Anglo-Saxons around into areas around the world and listen to this, arch racist, get rid of the despicable others. So that's what the intention that's leading this whole thing. Believe it or not, do your research.
Attempting to achieve consensus with a group of parties who are all Remainers. The only person that didn't turn up, of course, was Jeremy Corbyn, which is odd. Well, he's perfectly happy to meet Hamas, isn't he? Perfectly happy to meet Hezbollah. Happy to take tea with the IRA, but he wouldn't go and meet Mrs May, which I find a little bit strange. They told us when we voted that we were voting for uncertainty. Well, let me tell you what would have happened if we voted to remain. Since that date, we have seen the confirmation. Despite 50 years of lies from the British establishment, 50 years of the British establishment telling us that the common market, that the European Union is just about trade, cooperation, and will not affect our sovereignty. I remember very well doing a debate against Nick Clegg. Oh, I'm sorry, Sir Nick Clegg, that's important, that bit.
Who now owns Facebook.
Saying to him, one of the reasons I did not want to be in the European Union is because they would build a European army, and I believe that would threaten NATO and our own military abilities. I was told that I was some sort of hysterical crank, lying to the public. Now we have Mr Juncker telling us by 2025 there will be a European army, navy and air force.
Yes, Nigel Farage, a very wise man. He's worth listening to.
On the 9th of May this year, Mrs Merkel, the real boss, of course, of Europe, and Monsieur Macron, whose star may have fallen somewhat, but they will be giving a joint press conference announcing further deep, sweeping, and they use the word reforms. What they mean are a further centralisation of power. This European project is about building a unitary state.
Right. The European Union, of course I didn't realise this at the very beginning, and that was when Ted Heath took us into the Union in the 1970s or early 70s, is that the European Union is the central core of this one world government. Okay, so of course they just wanted to focus on economics, but behind that they knew darn well what they were planning to do. And as a very dear friend of mine who's now passed over, who was married to a banker, she said to me, she was, I think, around about 96, 97 when she said it to me, in full consciousness, said the bankers plan in sections of 100 years at a time. It's not the same people, but it's the same policies.
It is about getting rid of the nation-states as effective operating entities.
That's right, making them into the one world order, that central area of Europe.
Far from remain, having given us certainty, we would have plunged further into, frankly, regional irrelevance. So let's be clear, Brussels isn't working, and right across Europe there are people now rising up on the right, the centre and the left saying they wish to govern our own countries. And just as in the past in history we have often been the nation that has given the example to the rest of Europe, I believe that by delivering Brexit, we will also get rid of this European Union and replace it with a Europe of sovereign nation states working together as friends and trading.